Welcome, everyone. My name is Marg Appleby. I'm a coordinator working with Central West Lachlan Landcare. I must thank my committee for their support and time, making time available this morning and in the lead up to the webinar. It's great to have you with us. I've been very fortunate to be working with Landcare for nearly 10 years, with my anniversary coming up in April. So I'm currently serving my fourth and final term on the Central West as a Central West representative on the Landcare New South Wales Council. So Landcare is my thing. It is my great pleasure to be hosting the International Women's Day webinar, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have the most amazing women joining us today. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners, leaders, current and emerging, in each of the traditional lands that we are meeting on today. I work and live in the northern reaches of the Wiradjuri country in Parkes and Forbes Shires. So just a few housekeeping issues for us today. Importantly, we want you to be involved in today's webinar and are thrilled to have you on board. We want to hear from you and we want to hear your questions and take this opportunity to empower others, young and old. This webinar is not only about hearing from our amazing guests, but it's also a chance to encourage each other and acknowledge why there is still a need for us to celebrate International Women's Day. So to make this possible and to give the most value to your questions, just a little bit of housekeeping. To ask questions during this live session, please go and log into Landcarer, the online community platform. In the last segment, we will be discussing questions and topics posted by people on the Landcarer platform. So a bit of an overview from me. I grew up celebrating International Women's Day, attending functions with my mum from a very young age. But it wasn't until International Women's Day on the 8th of March 2018 that I really started reflecting on this day. And last year I was challenged even further to justify why a special day is allocated to women. Of course, it was someone being facetious, but there was a level of intent with the direction of the comments, and that challenged me. On International Women's Day 2018, I was fortunate to attend a breakfast function at Lions Park in Forbes with guest speaker Jean Kitson, who many of you would be familiar with. This morning, of course, was filled with fun, lots of laughs, but it was also the first time that I seriously gave any thought to International Women's Day and its importance. It was actually the need for a hashtag that sparked it off. Of course, I went to the International Women's Day website to find the relevant hashtag, and it was then that I really started to look into the significance of the day and what it means to women across the world and Australia. Across New South Wales, the area of Australia that I know best, the State Landcare program provides funding for over 80 coordinators, with a large proportion of them being women. Women are an intricate part of Landcare, and it's fantastic to have the opportunity this morning to talk about how we can be sharing and communicating in a productive way to end gender bias. So, my guests, I am so pleased to welcome these lovely ladies this morning, and I know that you will be inspired by them. So I am welcoming Ellie Winehoven, Angelica Arnott, Hannah Rice-Hayes, Vivian Higgins, and Karen Stark. Basically, this morning, great to have you here, girls. Basically, this morning, we will be focusing over three areas. And they are awareness raising, talking about gender bias and inequality and how we effectively challenge this behaviour. And number two, influencing behaviour and how women can impact in that area. And the third one being gender parity or equal representation and how we see this changing and emerging every day. So without further ado, I would like to head into our first topic. And through the sessions, we'll be talking to each of these ladies and they will be able to give their view on how we can be effectively working to create change. So my first guest that I would like to introduce, Ellie. Ellie, you own a fantastic swimwear business, which I actually found on TikTok, of all places. And look, I would imagine that you are impacted by gender bias and inequality through your business and social media on quite a regular basis. So what do you do to address some of these issues, particularly with your social media providers?
Yeah, so hey Marg, thank you for having me today. I definitely see gender bias through social media in my business, particularly in having a swimwear business. I often post TikToks and Instagram posts and things, and often they portray the female body, as they must when I'm selling swimwear. And interestingly, every single one of my TikToks gets banned straight away, gets removed from the site, and I then have to go and appeal this decision. Which is quite upsetting when I'm just trying to show my swimwear products, but they're deemed as overly sexualized because they represent the female body. So particularly on International Women's Day, I think that it's really important to challenge this, and I often appeal these decisions and write to these providers and stand against this, because there's no reason that that should be occurring. And I also see this...
Sorry, I was going to say, certainly when we see a lot of other content on social media, which you would find, well, much more confronting than swimwear.
Definitely. And interestingly, my posts also get removed when it's just my plastic female mannequin, which is just outrageous because it shows the curves of the female body. So that's something that I'm only one person, but I'm trying to make change through standing against that and appealing all those TikTok decisions that get made. So
good stuff. Well, thanks so much, Ellie. Karen, tell us a little bit about your current roles and how you see changes evolving in terms of how farmers are portrayed. How are you seeing the stereotypes evolve, and what do you see as benefits to working within the ag industry?
Sure. So my background isn't in agriculture at all. I grew up in a city in Perth and lived in the UK, working in different community education programs around environmental behaviours. I now have my own business, and I run the National Renewables and Agriculture Conference. So on our farm, we put a massive solar diesel pump in, and I wanted to share these types of stories. So I guess historically, agriculture has been very male dominated. And for myself even, I think it's important to challenge our own subconscious biases sometimes, because when I'm talking about farmers and their properties, I sometimes catch myself saying him instead of his or her, because women can be farmers, and there are a lot of female farmers out there, just as many as men, not as many as men, but there are still females out there. And interestingly, I met a lady that spoke at the same conference that I was speaking at in WA. Her name's Kim Story, and she bought a farm herself as a single woman in the Central West, out where I am. And she would go into town or speak to people, and she'd find out that people would say, "Oh, who's your husband?" or "Where's your husband?" And she herself was a farmer, but she kept having to challenge these kind of biases that people assume the male is a farmer, and kind of re-educate people. So she's a photographer, and she ended up creating and publishing a book called What Does a Farmer Look Like? Because she Googled what does a farmer look like after she came across this bias constantly, and it was white men with chewing hay with a hat on and a checkered shirt. So she created a book called What Does a Farmer Look Like, and went around taking photos of female farmers, families, farmers of different ethnic backgrounds, just to try and start to get that stereotype a little bit away from the dominant male white Australian farmer. So I guess, I've had to challenge my own bias in that area as well. But working in agriculture, I've found out in regional Australia, it's actually given, I think, myself a little bit more of a platform, because I'm in a unique position of being female, ag, leading the way a bit in the renewables area. And I think sometimes this can be a benefit, and the media look for diversified voices out there. So I've been lucky enough that a lot of media have approached me through either knowing about the work I do or from social media, and I've been able to actually promote my message and trying to get more renewables out there.
Fantastic. And I really do think you kind of reflect, I guess, where I've come from as well, that, I do have that picture. It is an automatic thing, I guess, that we do grow up with that perception of what a farmer looks like. And it's lovely to see that changing, and lovely to see future generations thinking about that as well, and realizing that it isn't just that stereotypical white man in the hat and the chewing. Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Vivian, look, tell us a little bit about how you came to be living in Australia and the subtle ways that people can impact how children connect and understand and respond to issues of gender bias and equality, perhaps without even realising it. Give us a little bit of background of where you are and what your daily role is.
So, hello, thank you, Marg, for having me on this show. I'm currently residing in Parkes, New South Wales. I am a wife, a mother of 3 kids, and I actually feel quite fortunate to be where I am with the support of family and friends. We're at the moment, I've just transitioned back to work as a community pharmacist. But since moving back from Canada, we've actually started our journey now to becoming more self-sustainable in terms of our backyard growing. But I originally come from Malaysia. So when I was growing up in Malaysia, I grew up in the city. And so growing stuff or agriculture didn't come naturally for me. I used to sit by the back door and watch my mum and dad in the garden as they potted around, but never really took to it myself. But, growing up as a minority in Malaysia too, I felt like tertiary education for me was very slim in accessing good tertiary education back home. So my parents worked really hard to ensure that I moved overseas. So I moved to Australia when I was 19 for university and have been here since. Again, not really thinking about agriculture back then. But now having children of my own, I feel like it's very important to kind of influence children when we can. So, when I had my first child, I stopped working full time, decided to stay at home and, encourage more time with the children and bond. But I felt like that took away a lot of my identity as a person, like as a professional, because prior to that I was working as a pharmacist, career-minded. But once I stopped working, that kind of all transitioned to a different person, if you know what I mean. I was a wife and I was a mum, but no longer Viv as a professional. So anyway, that was still good because I bonded with my family and I got to do lots of things that I wouldn't have been able to do when I was working. But, fast forward to now looking back, I'm glad that I had that time because, life would have been different if I continued working always. But I mean, now that I'm come back to work, life is hectic, with work and still juggling home life and still trying to be self-sustainable, like growing stuff in the garden. It's hectic. Work still keeps going, life still keeps going. But we find that now there's a lot of Chris and I are both sharing a lot of our roles at home. So I'm no longer just, the one that's looking after everything in the household. Chris actually helps with picking up and dropping off kids or cooking, or on our days off, we're both outside working in the yard. And it's kind of our way to show that it's a shared role rather than just a stereotypical, a woman's role should be at home doing everything in the house and, dad's off to work. And when I went back to work, it was a strange concept for the kids to grasp, oh, mummy's actually got a job and mummy's going to work, So yeah, the kids are out with us. We like to encourage our children to be involved in what we're doing and see what we're doing, why we're doing it. The kids are out with us when we make plans for our garden, planting new seeds and watering and looking after the plants. And we feel that having the kids involved with us, with both of us, actually, we feel that kids have a better understanding in terms of not just their involvement about food production, but also like they see that the parents are both equally contributing to this household, and it shows that the togetherness of us and gender equity in our lives, really.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, and that's perfectly representing, I guess, how we can demonstrate balance at home. Which, as you say, can sometimes be a tricky thing to sort of get to that point. But fantastic. Angelica, over the years that you have been working across so many areas, really quite bamboozled me. I imagine that you would have seen a significant change in these gender bias issues. How do you see these issues of gender bias and inequality playing out in the agricultural sector now, which is where we quite often see you?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? It's strange for me because my background obviously isn't in ag. A bit like Karen, I have a similar thing going on. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me here today too, and to all the beautiful women on this panel, because it's just so lovely sitting here listening to all your stories and so relatable, and it's a great way to start the day. And I think, just back to your question, Marg, I feel, this is a very exciting time. I feel excited, and I think it's a very positive time. I had this little insight last night as I was drifting off to sleep, and I saw Mother Earth. It was like Mother Earth sending invitations out to all her daughters, asking them to come back to the land, telling them that she needs their healing powers. And I kind of got that visual. I got all kind of emotional, and I thought, wow, that's something I'm going to bring to the table today, because as witness to what's going on in what we do, training people to do biodynamics and regenerative ag, we're seeing this huge influx of women coming to the fore. And it's a very dynamic, powerful place for women to be, because they are agents for change. And I just feel really excited about that. So, that gap is sort of shrinking, and we see that women working in this space are enabling a bigger change, a greater, flow-on effect. And as Karen said before, they do challenge the paradigm of doing it as it's always been done. They can't, because generally they come to this space, they haven't necessarily inherited a farm. And a lot of women now are moving into the space, buying their own farms, and determined to make change for the planet, themselves, the children, all for the greater effect. And so that's really inspiring, and I'm witnessing that more and more as we, continue our training. And also, I think there's a conversation that I wanted to start, and we're talking a lot more about how we can invite back our Indigenous sisters to the land, and how we, create pathways to entry for our Indigenous, brothers and sisters to be more productive on the land, farming the way that they should be farming, entitled to be farming, because we've got so much to learn in that space as well from them. So I just think that it's very positive. There's a big change, a big shift, and I can see it and feel it, and we're hoping that gap starts to narrow more and more.
Yeah, totally. And I think, with the Indigenous agriculture side of things, certainly the last 12 to 18 months in Australia, if nothing else, has demonstrated the need for that approach with greater veracity. I think it needs to gain heaps more momentum, and I think that is happening as well, which is very exciting, as you say. Changing the paradigm. It's
Absolutely, and we need to keep talking about that, because as landowners we have a responsibility to invite our Indigenous people back to the land, and share that. And how that happens, I don't know, but I think we need to talk about that more.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to our next topic of influencing behaviour. You have led us into that topic really well. Thank you, Angelica. So continuing on with you, how do you go about doing that on a day-to-day basis in the influential roles that you have? What are the things that you are doing to encourage that change?
Well, I don't know if I'm consciously stepping out into the world going, oh, I'm going to make a change. But I do believe that when you are following your passion, and that you are true to that, and you operate in the world with integrity and truth, I see that unfolds. And as you step through your, the process of making change, when you're in your truth, I think people automatically find that an addictive thing. and they
Yeah.
gravitate to you. So I think just by being, the change you want to see in the world, by being that and being operating always with integrity and the best possible outcomes for people, the planet, the future. I think that's how I've always operated, and I see that with the work that I do with my husband, how people just generally gravitate towards that. That creates change.
Hannah, I have skipped one of my questions for you. That was like, the perfect question. We went there and we've gone away. Hannah, as a land carer, particularly over the past 12 to 18 months, and we did talk about the change in our landscape as a result of the drought, fire and flooding, what connections can you see have become more obvious between social justice and climate justice? And what are the things that we can be doing to help address these issues?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's been a remarkable 18 months to live through. I think that everyone would agree, watching and experiencing the shocking drought, fire, flood, then to pandemic, all of these natural disasters induced by climate change. It seems that it's been a period of really massive change for all of us. And at the same time as the natural disasters are happening, we've had movements like, the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement really getting out there and shaking the tree and really helping our society to identify where some of the injustices are occurring and where discrimination is occurring and how we can, learn to act as a community and as individuals. It's been a massive period of learning, I think. And as a land carer, I've always tended to be quite tunnel visioned, looking at ecosystem restoration and helping to connect our community and our people to the land. And I think that the last little while has just really helped open my eyes to see that the way that climate change really amplifies the inequalities that exist. And that we can see the way that it disproportionately is going to affect and is already affecting marginalised communities.
Yeah.
So, we see that people who are in survival mode, if you've whether that's because of a natural disaster or because of poverty or enduring discrimination of some kind, you can't think beyond the next step, the immediate survival needs. So I've come to realise more just how important it is for us to support as many people as we can to move out of a survival space and into a life where we can thrive, and in that space we can make decisions that are about better mitigating our impacts or adapting to the future that's coming to us. So if we want large-scale action for our environment and for our communities in the face of climate change, then, it's been a watershed moment for me. I'm probably pretty late coming to the party and realising it, but really understanding that you can't have climate action and climate justice without social justice too.
I think it's probably been a bit of a watershed for a lot of people. It's not just you. And unfortunately, as with a lot of things in life, quite often it takes a significant event or events for us to really come to terms with what extremes of change now need to happen. So thanks very much for that, Hannah. So in terms of moving on to influencing behaviour and how women can be doing that, Ellie, being a young role model for young women and sharing the story of building a business with a strong environmental conscience, which I just love, in terms of the products you use and how they are manufactured and distributed, what is it that you would encourage people to be thinking about when they are making purchases, regardless of how big or small those purchases are? Because, we can quite easily get caught up in that, just the easy pickings, I suppose, instead of actually going through the thought process of what goes into what we are actually wearing or using.
Yes, definitely. So coming from the textiles industry and sort of linking back to what Hannah was saying there about climate change. We know that fast fashion has a detrimental impact on the environment and essentially on climate change. So we can also link that back again to International Women's Day, because we can choose to educate ourselves on where our products are coming from, who's making them, and how they're made, whether they're ethically or sustainably made. And then once we're educated, we can then choose how to go from there. So supporting women in business, supporting local business, small business, supporting Black business, as Hannah was saying. I think if we really educate ourselves and read up on what we're buying, and we sort of need to steer away from that instant gratification of online shopping and purchasing something for a very small cost and then getting it in the mail the next day. I think that is very dangerous, and we need to educate ourselves on how to make smarter decisions for the environment and also to support women in business.
Yeah, that's totally right. And I think, it's quite easy to not even be in that space of thought. Just as you're growing up, you might not have an awareness that is really even an issue, that buying local products and slow products, as you say, not just crazy, manufactured products. If people aren't taught that, so education is a big thing. If people aren't taught that, then they just don't understand the importance. So you're doing a great job to promote that. So fantastic. Hannah, back to you again. Look, one thing that women still struggle with is the tall poppy syndrome. And it's, a phrase that's been bandied around for a long time, and I guess experienced it at a lot of different levels for women. I personally see you as a woman who lifts others up, and have had that experience myself through our involvement with Landcare New South Wales Council. And this is a trait that many women could learn from. So what is it that has brought you to this point, this mindset, this positive mindset of encouraging other women? And what are the things that we could be doing to encourage other women?
Thanks, Margaret. And I see that for you too, so I'll pay that compliment right back at you. This is a perfect example. Look, how have I come to it? Probably the basis is the women's liberation movement, I think. LGBTIQ rights movement has probably got something to do with it. I come from a family of really strong females, and I've been working in this natural resource management space since I left school, and throughout the entire period have just been so lucky to have been supported every step of the way by another woman that has held out her hands to help me up, to vouch for me, to send me opportunities, to include me in discussions. And, I think that it's having that kind of support network is just, I'm a testament to the fact that empowered women empower women. Yeah. Look, the sisterhood is real. I look around my network of colleagues, and I've got some incredible men in my network too, but most of them are women, and we have a really supportive, really trusting, really encouraging culture within the network that I work. And look, sometimes I look around and go, oh, is that equality? And question myself, well, maybe we should be being more careful and encouraging more men to join. And of course, yes, men are important in this discussion. But also I then look at the rest of society and go, no, every opportunity that we have to lift up other women improves the system entirely.
Yeah, totally.
So the things that we can do is whenever we see a young woman looking for opportunities, that we support her to achieve those opportunities however we can. And I'm starting to get to that point in my life where I can do that more and more, and it just feels incredible. It feels wonderful to be able to support people to achieve their goals. And there's lots of ways that we can do that.
No, I think you raise a really good point, Hannah, that, it can be sometimes that it is for older women, more mature women like myself, that have maybe learnt that, there is an appropriate time when you can just say, no, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. That it might not be in the scope of a younger woman, depending on where she's come from. I know certainly when I was younger, I wouldn't have had that level of confidence to speak up and say, no, I'm sorry, I don't think that's acceptable. So I think that you raise a really good point, that I guess it's through our encouragement and development of programs, I guess, to encourage younger women that, that makes a huge difference. Thanks, Hannah. Karen, what are the ways that we can be impacting on our children in terms of the roles that we play at home and at work and in our community?
Yep, so just have to say I've loved what everyone has said so far in this section, and particularly Hannah talking about that she grew up in a family of really strong women. I think that's really important. And if you're a mother, you've got a really good opportunity, I guess, to set by example and show your children that women can do anything that men can do. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and it's quite important for me, for her to see me that I'm working in a job I really love. I'm really passionate about it. It does mean that I sometimes end up doing a bit of work when she's back from school or on weekends, but because I'm wanting to do the best I can for that particular role. But I think it's important for her to see that women can be fulfilled from a home life and being with children and with their children and being present, and also from a work life where you're doing something that's meaningful to you, that you really believe in, that gives you strength and also a drive, and it gives you purpose, I suppose. So I think women can have a really important role at home and in the community as well. I get involved in my daughter's school, the P&C, so that she sees that I'm interested, and, if I can influence there, I do as well. But so I guess that's how I see I can influence, particularly my daughter.
Fantastic. Viv, we know of the significance of the impact that we have on children when they are very little. You're in that space at the moment. Just by simply involving them, as you mentioned earlier, involving them in the garden, involving them in just household events, encouraging them and demonstrating good choices, I guess, is a huge part of that as well. And Karen sort of just spoke to that as well. What are the things that adult role models can do to increase the understanding of children to make those positive choices? And what impact does that then have on our communities in the long term? And Karen's kind of led into that as well. So
yeah, I agree with everything that Karen has just spoken about, because we're kind of on the same page in that sense too. Our children are young and we try to juggle everything. Doing your work that fulfills you, but then also try to, spend the time with the children and do what you need to do at home. But then, I truly believe that when the children are young, that's when they absorb the most, and they generally look up to us as parents as being the best role models, they could ask for. They look up to us for like direction in life, guidance, and how we are, the education that we provide to them, our ways of thinking, and the decisions that we make can definitely, I think, influence the way the next generation would then think and behave. Chris and I, we do try to expose our children to a range of different aspects in life, whether it's different ways of living, different foods, people. We talk to all sorts of people and invite them to our space, and we think that's quite important because the children need to see that we're not just in our own little bubble, and that there are other people that influence us as well to make us who we are. Different cultures and values that other people can bring to the plate too. So I'm really lucky to have my parents that can come from Malaysia and kind of influence the children in from their perspective. And we learn to then accept everybody for who they are, regardless of their status, their background, color, or gender. And we think it's really important, for our kids to learn to be confident in themselves and learn to and choose to be kind to everybody, no matter where they're from. I think from our current focus, an aspect that we feel like I can influence the kids is, you know, our food production and being more self-sustainable at home. So we, you know, we try to influence them by, you know, teaching about where food comes from and the importance of being self-sufficient. We started small, and we've through lots of trial and errors and learning, we've managed to, you know, grow our garden and produce more and more food every season. You know, it's nothing more rewarding than being able to provide that opportunity for the children and our friends and family to, you know, be comfortable in that space and learn together, and, you know, have our own eggs from our chickens or honey from our bees, and then be able to go out and harvest the food, cook together, and share stories and share experiences, and influencing their food choices every day. I think it's really rewarding. It's tasty, and it saves us having to go to the grocery shops. You know, involving the kids.
And too, if you're engaging with people in your home from the community as well, and they are learning, you know, it's not, you're not just in your own little bubble, then I guess that then encourages them to be contributors to the community in the long term. So it kind of has an evolving effect as well, that, you know, they realise that they can then, or they're empowered, I suppose, to be contributing at that community level, which we know, particularly in small communities, that that is just so important, because we rely on volunteerism so strongly at so many levels. So yeah, fantastic. And look, that honey is pretty fabulous. I know from personal experience.
We love to share our produce. We're pretty proud of our stuff, and it's great to be able to do that for our community and our friends. You know, like we feel like the ripple's definitely gone further and outwards, further than we expected. So that's been really nice.
Yeah, fantastic. So moving on, in terms of gender parity or equal representation, how do we see this changing every day? So Hannah, having worked in many different land care spaces, from the grassroots land to Landcare New South Wales Council, you would have a clear overview of the dynamics of contribution. And how can we continue to keep gender parity as something that is discussed in a respectful manner? And what are the ways that we can be encouraging women to take on these roles?
It's look, a really interesting discussion point. Look, in my experience, the types of land care activities that I'm involved in have actually got pretty good gender parity, you know, in comparison to a lot of other, you know, kind of more male-dominated industries. That this is where, you know, the ones where I'm involved in, pretty good, but that's only through deliberate action. And you know, it's true that the higher you go to a centre of power, the fewer women are involved on our boards and committees within the formalised land care movement, unless there is deliberate policies that guide you know, the proportion of women to men that can sit on boards. I mean, in our organisation, you know, I work for a district land care network, Richmond Landcare, and in our organisation we had a moment where the balance was unequal, and so we deliberately set about to find more women to bring onto the board, and so look, I would say one of the best ways that we can do that in the formalised land care movement is to deliberately seek women and say to them that we need more women. You know, we have a tendency to sit back and go, oh, you know, if a board's not for me, or if we're juggling lots of different, you know, life, family, work, sitting on another board might not necessarily be the most attractive thing. But I think that being really specific about our communication, saying that we need women to just be there. So just showing up, just having women in the room improves the quality and the diversity and the inclusiveness of the decisions that we make for our movement. So some other things, you know, if you're in a position where you're taking contractors on, for example, in our network, looking at bush regenerators for on-ground works, asking the contractors if they have any women in their team or First Nations peoples in their teams. And just by asking and encouraging those contractors to look at the diversity in their teams, we're helping to improve that culture too. So, yeah, I think those are two really great ways of supporting engagement. And perhaps look, if you are doing those things already and you're still not getting great engagement from women, then maybe that's a time to have a really hard look at the culture within the organisation or within your group to just check in on how inclusive and how safe a space it is for women.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's some fantastic ideas. And, it can be a topic that can be very controversial. And certainly, I guess we've seen that generate down from politics and right through, I guess, lots of different levels of society and large organisations like corporate businesses. So, something that's has had a bit of controversy in the past. But I think that we are recognising the importance of that. I guess we're seeing the benefits of that now. So, fantastic. Angelica, I'm sure that you hear the words biodynamic farming roll off the tongue of many people now, which I'm sure has changed over the years. But there was a time when it might not have been viewed so willingly. What are the parallels between the attitude of these new farming practices and the attitude to gender roles? What's the parallel there?
It's an interesting one. I think it's still evolving. So it's hard for me to kind of be as direct as I want to be, because I think as women move into this space more and more, I think the culture is just going to automatically change. And as the change takes place and is reflected back in the landscape, we'll see that parity will start to shift. So, I just think it's all about timing and moving with this, this new culture and supporting that any way we can. And I think Hannah had so many interesting points, brilliant points to make. And it's all about supporting women in this space. And when you do that, it's so uplifting, it's so powerful, it's so dynamic that it keeps us in motion. Yeah. And that's how I see, the biodynamic regenerative space evolving. We as women need to have more support for each other to move into this space without any judgment, without any barriers. And so, I don't know if that's answered your question 100%, but that's it's all about support. It's all about conversation. It's all about being there for each other. And we do that with open hearts, because that's what regenerative living is all about. That's what regenerative farming is all about. It's opening up the heart space to invite people in, to change the way we do practice.
And just think of all of the things that we would have missed out on over the years if we hadn't been willing to do that, Angelica. It's,
Look, I see the change at grassroots level. I see change taking place out on the farm. And I think that's impacting us emotionally as much as it is agriculturally. Yeah. And that's where I sit. I just think we as women out there in the space are just, the change that we're able to make affects us, our children, the food we eat, the life we're living, the community we want to share our bounty with. That's how it works. It's all about that flow-on effect, and it's very important.
Yeah, fantastic.
Very important.
Yes.
I support what all of you have said today. Has been really resounding for me. I love it. I've loved every minute of it. And Hannah, it makes me emotional listening to the support in your network and in your culture, because that's what we all need to strive for. Ask the questions, demand more equality, demand it, in every way.
Fantastic. Thanks, Angelica.
Thank you.
Ellie, I firmly fit within the Gen X zone, the Gen X, and often we and other gens can be quite critical of Generation Z or Z, depending on what country you come from. We'll go with Z. What positive contributions do you think that Gen Z are bringing to the table? And what are some of the helpful lessons that we could be learning from your generation?
Yeah, so I agree in that Gen Z can often be criticised, but I see a real sense of social responsibility that I'm quite proud of within our generation, in terms of standing up for environmental issues and women's rights issues as well. I think Gen Z has a real sense of openness to learning, and to educating seems to be my buzzword for the day, but educating ourselves as much as we can on these issues and standing up for it, and, you know, lining the streets peacefully and demanding change. I think Angelica said just before about demanding change, and she also said before about it is a positive time. I think she meant in relation to agriculture, but I think it's a positive time in general in terms of demanding change. And it's coming from our generation, which is very empowering and inspiring.
Yeah, fantastic. Karen, we saw the gorgeous picture of yourself and your daughter in the lead-up promos for the webinar, and you have already mentioned her in the discussions this morning. What difference do you see that her generation will see in relation to gender equality and roles as she goes into the workforce?
Yeah, so great question. And I've, like Angelica said, I've loved everything that with all the women have said today. I think one thing that I think is pretty massive is the changing expectation on men's roles and women's roles over the generations. So I live on the farm now, and my in-laws, my beautiful in-laws, live 200 metres down the road. And often when I'm talking to my mother-in-law, that was a very traditional gendered, I guess, upbringing for her. You know, she doesn't work on the farm. Her husband's a farmer and works, although she did work when the kids were older. But I just see that there's been a massive change in what men are expected to do in bringing up children as well. They're expected to be hands-on and help with child raising, disciplining, you know, even chores around the house. That's changing. Women do a lot more, but the expectation is that men do help. So social norms are changing as well. And this is important because change, I believe, starts at home. So if my daughter's able to see more equality between my partner and I, in the way that we look after her, in the jobs we do around the house. My partner's also, John, is very keen that he brings Noah out to do work on the farm, so she knows that she can work and it's not just a man's job. And he makes sure, he has shown me how to change a tyre several times, living, you know, on dirt roads that we live, and make sure that Noah sees me doing that. So I think as these changed expectations are embedded in our society and in our children, as she goes into the workforce, it won't be unusual for her to see a female mechanic or meet like she won't even blink if she meets a female farmer, which is great, because we don't want our children to be limited by the expectation of what women's jobs are and what men's jobs are. We want them to, you know, shoot for the stars.
Yeah, for sure. And as you say, you know, I'm sure that we would all acknowledge the important role that men do play in this whole discussion as well, that, you know, it's the influence that they have and the words that they use, their involvement in children's lives that make a difference and I guess they might not actually be talking about the topic specifically, but it's the demonstration of and how they're involved in things that makes the big difference. It's what we're doing, not what we're saying. So Viv, you would know this all too well with your family. And in your career as a pharmacist, have you had situations where your skills have been underestimated because you are a woman or because of your race or age? And also, how did you react? And what are the positive ways that women can take to direction they can take to protect themselves from being triggered when these things happen?
Yes, Mark, so this is a story that has stayed with me for quite a lot of years. So I was working as a fresh grad pharmacist in the rural New South Wales town. And I was young, you know, I was fresh, female pharmacist, Asian pharmacist. And I was serving this elderly gentleman, and he blatantly said to me, "No, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to that man pharmacist." And he just fobbed me right off. So, you know, at that point, I was meant to be the sole pharmacist at this shop, and I had a lot of responsibilities, and I was hoping for some kind of connection with the community and some kind of respect from the community. But when this man had said that to me, that triggered a fair bit of emotions for me. Was it because the reason why he said that, was that because of my age, or was that because of my inexperience, or my race, or my gender, or is that because he's not seen my face before and like he just preferred to have someone that he was familiar with help him out for the day? So, I could have taken it in like lots of different ways. I obviously was affected by that remark, but I knew that, and I needed a change because I was going to be the pharmacist there for a few years. And I needed for him to understand that, I want to create that relationship with you. I want to gain your trust. And so through the years, we've kind of worked on lots of different aspects, open communication. And through the years, then I've managed to build that respectful, good relationship with him. He's definitely understood that I'm qualified, more than qualified, and have professional judgments that are worthy to be able to help him out. So, I think that having an open mind, being respectful, and obviously for my role particularly, some kind of empathy towards other people and what they're going through, because their emotions have got a lot to do with how they then react and say things to us as women particularly, and try to keep everything open. And it's just important to think about everything before we jump into conclusions, and that helps keep everything at bay, I think.
Yeah,
today.
Having that empathy in different situations can I guess give you that chance to just say, oh geez, that really hurt me, like that was it may not have been the intent, but it's when you're surprised, I think, by a comment or by something that could be seen as discriminatory, it's being prepared, I guess, to find the appropriate way to call it out. And sometimes that isn't confrontational. Sometimes it is. And I think that, the Choose to Challenge theme for International Women's Day can be seen, I guess, challenge can be seen as something that is, confronting, but I think that a challenge can also be something soft, and it can be something that we can choose to be the bigger person and choose a gentle direction to go with the challenge, and sometimes it is just at that time that's not the appropriate time for you to challenge, as I'm sure you would come across that all the time. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. It's obviously something that stuck with you for a long time. So.
I think too, back then I was the only pharmacist, and I was the only female pharmacist that was there, and I felt very outnumbered. But today I'm working with a bunch of, we're in an all-female shop actually at the moment. So and I work with 2 other female pharmacists, and they're just been a fantastic bunch of ladies to work with, like Hannah was saying too, like supporting each other when you need a helping hand, just giving each other opportunities, and even just someone to hear you out. Sometimes that's all you need, bounce ideas off each other, and it's just so great to have that opportunity now to be with other women. So yeah, very lucky.
Yeah, fantastic. So look, that kind of rounds up that section of the webinar. We do have a couple of questions that have been put to us. The first being that women typically manage a variety of home, voluntary and work roles. How do you juggle such roles effectively without dropping any balls? And if you're like me, I've dropped plenty of balls, so to speak. So, it's a challenge for sure. And, Viv, obviously, that's, you sort of talked about that a little bit. I imagine that balancing everything is pretty tricky.
It's definitely, first and foremost, I'd have to say, I think that everyone that's spoken today has been so inspiring. You guys obviously have got lots going on your own plates and juggling lots of balls, I bet. And for myself, I personally, this year particularly, been trying to juggle three main things for me is work, my house life, home life with the family and kids, and the garden. And I'm so time poor at the moment. I can't seem to work at that fine balance. Sometimes, some days are really good. Some days, all my bowls are on the floor. It's terrible. And, you know, the mum guilt, I think that's the main thing that really kills me, because I feel like, you know, I'm trying to do my best for everything else, but then there's always something that's suffering. So it's not bad to have your bowls dropped every now and again. I feel like for myself, I find that these challenges or bowls keep me striving to better myself. Like if I didn't have these things, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I find that when I drop a bowl, I feel like it's a reflective moment for myself. Is it because, you know, we just need to have a break? Or do I need some time out? Or, you know, is there something else that we can do to help balance things out a little bit better? Because, you know, it's hard, it's challenging. And as much as I think this is a good opportunity today to think about too, like, as much as we're thinking about the importance of juggling the challenges that we have, we think we shouldn't forget about the importance of the juggler itself. So that's us. Like if we don't look after ourselves as the juggler, there won't be any bowls that's juggling.
Yeah.
So,
sure. Yeah, fantastic point. And I think quite often, you know, we just don't give ourselves enough credit for what we're actually doing. And hopefully through this session this morning, other people will have a better understanding that, yeah, we're all out there dropping balls. We can look so perfect on social media. And, you know, that's unfortunately the reality that, you know, people see our social media posts and that's just a perception. That's what we want to put out there. That doesn't mean that we haven't dropped 6 balls that day. It's just the photo at the moment. So look, Angelica, I'm sure that you would I guess have similar experiences in your day-to-day life. How do you go about juggling all the balls?
Well, to be honest, I nearly lost my mind last night just trying to put children to bed. And the reality was I'd had a really calm day. I thought I'd, ticked all my boxes. And then I just felt myself coming unraveled, because it is challenging. The work that we're all doing is it's mind-blowing how much we can fit into one day and then a week. And I spend a lot of time on my own as a single parent, not because my husband is working away. And so that's challenging in itself. And trying to be on top of your game all the time is just not a reality for me. And yes, I might post something that looks very well curated, but at the end of the day, I know that it took me an hour to get that photo together, and there were screaming children, demanding and having their needs met. It's not a perfect world. We all know that. We're all smart enough to kind of, clock that. But I don't know. There is no perfect solution. I think we have to acknowledge that we're frail in that space sometimes, that we need each other for support to just talk our way through that. But also it helps to be organised. It just helps to plan, to make lists. That's my husband's big, encourages me to do. It's not a natural thing for me. But when we make lists and we know that we can get to it, we don't have to get to it on the day. But we have to make time for, ticking some boxes for ourselves, for everyone. God love us.
Yeah,
we're workers if we can, and then still look gorgeous in the morning.
Yeah. Look, ladies, thank you so much for your contributions. I know that all of you are having the little bit of insight into what you do and your space. I know that you are all doing amazing things. Quite often we only see a small portion of that. Look, I have to wrap up this morning. We've got about a minute and a half left. And is there anything that anyone would just like to say in a quick 10-second wrap up? How about you, Ellie?
Thank you for organising this. Thank you for having us. It's as the other ladies have said, it's been very insightful, and I've learned a lot in this 1 hour time slot. So yeah, I can't wait to learn more about all of you ladies.
Yeah, fantastic. Hannah?
I'd just say keep on getting on. And I think we're part of a really beautiful movement, and the collective action that we can pull together is really powerful, and doing it together, choosing to challenge.
Yes, fantastic.
The way to go.
Beautiful.
Thanks for having us.
Karen, thanks, Hannah. Karen?
I guess thank you very much for organising it. I think this has been one of the more interesting webinars I've spoken on and that I've really enjoyed because it's so different to the usual ag and energy stuff I do. So thanks, and everyone keep doing the great work you're doing. It is inspiring.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great stuff. Fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies. And look, I would encourage people that if you'd like to share this session, then just via the Landcare Australia website or Landcarer. And we really appreciate your time with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.